Hi guys, Ben here. Just a quick disclaimer, the following episode includes some controversial themes and some unpopular opinions, as well as a very small amount of bad language. This is also my first ever podcast, so please bear with me because there are some technical difficulties, let's say, with mainly the audio at a certain point, you'll see when. And I don't really want to pick at my own work too much, but yeah, I think it's maybe a tad too long. You can watch it. I think it's very interesting. I think we cover a lot. I think it probably does need to be this long just in order to cover everything, and I'm waffling on now, so I should probably stop. Yeah, that's it. That's all I've really got to say about it. As well as, if you're watching on YouTube, brace yourself, because at the moment my hair is cut, but we shot this pre-lockdown haircut. So I have got my lockdown hair, so for the rest of this thing, it's going to be bad on the eyes. So if you're listening on Spotify or if you're just listening to the podcast, then you should probably count yourself lucky, because if you're watching it on YouTube, you're about to be scarred by my lockdown hair, and I do apologise for that. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling on now. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy the first ever Topical Podcast. If you've been living under a rock for the last 3 months, then you probably feel the exact same as the rest of us, as we've all been stuck inside trying to keep safe from one of the biggest global pandemics of a generation. Of course, I'm talking about the coronavirus.
The coronavirus, or COVID-19, as the kids call it.
I'm sure a lot of you are feeling frightened, you feel vulnerable.
The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer.
Handle it catastrophically wrong. Is it all a conspiracy? That's mad.
It is mad.
He cannot tell you to stay inside. That's probably one of the most left-wing decisions from a right-wing government ever. The way they feel entitled, like they have a right to be there.
Yeah.
We're open because we need to make money, essentially. People, did we have to listen to Welcome to the first ever Topical Podcast. Today we will be discussing the coronavirus in detail and answering questions like, did the media make it worse? Are China to blame? And is it all just a big conspiracy theory? But before we get into all that, I'd like to welcome my first ever guest to the podcast, Danica. Yeah, so, how's your lockdown been?
It's been alright actually. I've started a lot of new things. I've started painting again, I've been baking. Yeah, I've been up to a lot.
Yeah, well, obviously I did that video on my lockdown series where you and Brad did your thing.
Yeah.
Did you not enjoy that?
No, I enjoyed it. It was, the knitting part was a bit...
You're starting your own...
Yeah, I've joined a business called Tropic, which is like a skincare business. That's really exciting. I'm ambassador for them now. Yeah,
we'll be hearing more about Tropic later, so make sure you stick around for that. When it comes down to actually discussing this topic, it can be quite controversial. So we're going to do our best to provide the facts. Some bits will be opinionated, but it's more for the sake of debate. So if you find us giving a really controversial opinion, we're probably just playing devil's advocate just for the sake of debate or conversation. I think that's everything we need to clear up before we make a start. Just disclaimers really. Yeah. So let's make a start. So what I've got in front of me, I'm not going to lie and pretend like I've remembered all these things off the top of my head. I have got fact sheets in front of me just so I don't get anything wrong. Obviously, it's very up to date, this topic, so it is changing day by day, and we're probably filming this about a week before its release. So I'll run through the facts, but just bear in mind that they will change, and they will have changed by the time we're ready for uploading. Okay, so what is the coronavirus? What do you know about the coronavirus then?
Well, it's a strain of virus. There's not one particular coronavirus, and we've got at the moment COVID-19.
We've got coronavirus.
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
No, it's not. And yeah, it started in December, but it came here in like late January. and we've been stuck inside
We
ever
think
since.
it came here in late January.
Okay.
I mean, we don't. That's when they're saying we were looking at a serious
Yeah.
growth of a pandemic. Okay. I mean, I've got here that the coronavirus is exactly that. It is a family of viruses that cause disease in animals. 7, including the new virus, have made the jump into humans, but most cause the common cold-like symptoms. The problem with this one is that the symptoms go unseen most of the time, which explains why it's been able to travel the world as it has, because people don't realise they're carrying it and they're passing it on. Coronavirus disease 2019, or COVID-19, as a lot of people, I didn't know that's actually, did you know that it's actually, it's like an abbreviation, didn't realise that, but yeah, that sort of explains its huge global spread.
Yeah.
That makes it also very hard to control as well. So as of recording this podcast, there has been 11,301,850 people that have tested positive for coronavirus. Out of them, 531,806 have died. In terms of the UK numbers, well, let's discuss the overall numbers so far, because there's a lot of what they're calling pandemics, epidemics, that people have become more aware of now after this one. So we've got MERS and SARS, and again, it comes down to the reason why this is so big is because it's not necessarily as deadly as MERS and SARS. So I mean, the panic was up with those ones. Everybody thought the world was going to end. I mean, we'll get into the media later, but should have there been more of a urgency to do something with this disease?
To be honest, I think that the urgency was there, and it was just up to different governments and people if they listened to it or not. I think that one of the other reasons that it spread so far is because we're living in such like a globalized world, and so the thousands of miles between us and China just means nothing. You may as well be next door.
True.
You know, you talk about us being an island that protects us, but it really, you know, to an extent, but in this world it doesn't really, because one flight away and you're in a different country.
Well, I mean, that is really interesting, because we'll get into some case studies in a bit, but we've got islands, we've got like New Zealand and Taiwan that we can look at, and their numbers are staggering. And it makes you wonder whether actually the geographical location of a country is the biggest playing factor in how fast the disease has been able to spread, how many people it's been able to kill. So let's talk about the UK, because that's where we're from. That's what we want to discuss. That's the main argument we're going with today. Have we, as a country, managed to deal with this very well? So in the UK, 284,276 people have tested positive for coronavirus. Out of those, 44,131 people have died. And that makes the UK the country with the 4th highest death toll, and that is behind Russia, which is 3rd, Brazil, which is 2nd, and the United States, which is 1st. That's mad.
It is mad.
You think about the size of those other 3 countries,
Yeah.
and it's insane.
I think as a percentage, we're even further up there, because, you know, it's easy to say there's this many people in this country that have died, but you're right, when you look at the scale and the size of our country compared to the USA. I
mean, the USA, Brazil, Russia, they're all so much bigger than we are but I mean, we're a big population for a small country, really, because I always forget how small we are. I mean, it doesn't take that long. I feel like it's a long time to travel from one end of the country to the other. But that's it's not a very long distance, really. We're looking at about 1,000 miles from head to toe, I think. So it's really not very big. And there's 65, roughly, million people in our country. That's Northern Ireland, not including Southern Ireland. So we've got... break it down into the different parts of the UK. We've got In Northern Ireland, there's been 522 deaths. In Wales, there's been 1,525 deaths. In Scotland, there's been 2,487. And in England, there has been 39,567 deaths. Now you're shaking your head. Why are you shaking your head? Because that is an insane number compared to the other three.
I mean, I think you have to take into account that both Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales are, you know, for the majority, they've got much more rural areas than we have. You know, we've got a much denser population.
I've got population stats if you want me to give you them.
Yeah.
So in Northern Ireland, the population is 1.8 million. In Wales, it's 3.2 million. In Scotland, it's 5.5 million. However, in England, it's 56.2 million.
Exactly.
So it speaks for itself, and you can see why those numbers are so much higher in England, because the population's bigger. So yeah, I mean, we can defend it. We've all got different governments who have all decided to do different things. They're not all taking the same opinion and the same approach. I mean, it's when it comes to population density, which I think is a massive factor, but we'll counter-argue that again later with Taiwan. London's population is 9.3 million. That's big. It's verging on one of the world's megacities, and that alone is almost bigger than the whole of Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland's total populations put together, and that's just London.
Yeah.
So it's pretty big. The population density in London, in central London, is 14,550 people per square kilometre. Now, if we think about the house that I'm sat in, we've got this little area. What would you, as an estimation, because you're talking about household and then people per household.
I couldn't tell you. The scale of London, I just can't figure out in my head. It's insane.
I reckon there's a couple hundred people, maybe 200 to 300 people in this square kilometre around where we're sat now, which is weird. I've never thought about that before. That's quite a lot of people, really, if you to take that into account, like, and average it over the whole country, because that London statistic will be averaged for the English population density. That'll be averaged over the whole country, because obviously there's some places where you'll go 2 or 3 miles between houses. So, but to compare Edinburgh, which is Scotland's most populated, the population density is only 1,830 people. So I think, really, should we be talking about the UK as a whole? Because the whole podcast is titled around whether the UK did a good job. I think the first thing we should really consider is whether we should talk about Wales, Ireland and Scotland, or whether we should put our focus more onto England, because we're talking about the English government first and foremost. They've got different governments, and I mean, the populations...
It's just impossible to compare.
It's not fair, is it, really?
I think we're best to compare, you know, similar population sizes and, you know, across the globe.
Yeah, that's true. So it wouldn't be fair, really, to compare England. Alright, so let's have a look at other countries across the globe and see how they've done. We'll look at their strategies. We've got quotes from the world leaders as well, which should make it interesting, because there are some interesting world leaders out there at the moment. So we've both got our sheet. So we'll start with Brazil. I mean,
the quote is just shocking. It's probably a good place to start.
You read the quote. So this is the quote from, do you know how to pronounce the name?
I'd say Jair Bolsonaro.
We'll go with that.
He said, it's raining, we're going to get wet and some are going to drown in the rain.
In reference to the virus being like rain. Well, I mean, it's a good job the virus isn't like rain, otherwise we'd all be dead, especially in this country. The incompetence of a world leader there, it makes you wonder whether it is a conspiracy. Like, it's a joke question whether it's a conspiracy, but he's literally just letting people die there. Their death toll is 63,254 people.
It's their job to take this seriously. Whether it ends up being, at this point it might, I don't know when this was said, but, at this point it might not have been declared a pandemic or anything like that, but it's their job to take these hints seriously. And it's just shocking. It
is shocking. That quote is terrible. Because it means that they've acknowledged that it's something that's bad, and they're just it's literally like...
I mean, it's
knocking it down, really.
Yeah,
the seriousness of it is. Okay, let's move on to the next one, because we know Brazil. I mean, yeah, we know Brazil's not done good. They are... I can't remember what I said now. They're third or second in total deaths.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've got... Do you know how to pronounce this one? I can do the last name.
I'll just say Frederiksen.
Yeah, let's go for Frederiksen. On the 11th of March, the coronavirus was deemed a pandemic. 2 days later, she closed the country's borders, and soon after, she closed the nurseries, schools, and banned gatherings of more than 10 people. The death toll due to the coronavirus in Denmark now stands under 250 deaths. Is that an argument for how we should really be looking at approaching this in the future?
I think so, because I think when you get these warnings from other countries, when these world leaders, leading by example, get these warnings, the first thing they should do is take these drastic measures. And yes, it affects the economy, and that is a massive thing to take into consideration, but it's about the long-term plans. She's thinking, I think there, if she closes it all pretty quickly, then she can open it up quicker, and it will have a smaller effect, like it has, a really minuscule effect on that country, and the economy can be back up and running. Whereas if you let it affect your country, it's just going to affect it in the long run.
So you reckon we've sat in lockdown for longer because they didn't close the borders and stuff?
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I don't actually have the statistic, but if anybody in the comments wants to let us know when Denmark came out of lockdown, that'd be really interesting. And the hit to their economy would also be really interesting. If anybody would want to drop that in the comments, I'll love heart it so it sits at the top. Next. This has got to be the most interesting one, because alright, we're talking about Donald Trump. I'll let you read the quote, because I think it'll be funnier when you read it, because I've read it, and just reading it at the same time as saying it will be quite interesting. Go on, you can read the quote.
In late February, he said the virus would disappear, but in March said he'd always known it would be a pandemic.
Yeah, it's good old Donald. He always knows. He knew from the start, and that's why they don't have anywhere near as many deaths as the rest of the world then. Oh, no, they do. I mean, that's in that man's hands, in my opinion.
It's just beyond laughable now. Like, it's, I feel like, when he was in the running for the election and when he first got elected, it was all, quite funny and laughable. How can they elect him? And then when you're faced with something like a pandemic.
And it's right at the end of his term as well.
You just get speechless at how we can handle it.
I don't think many people in the world would handle it the way that he has.
His strong opinions are, one thing on whatever subject, whatever topic it is, but in terms of the coronavirus, there's, the facts are people are dying. You'd expect him to take at least that seriously when his,
as soon as one person dies, it's serious, because it's then proven that it's got the ability to kill somebody. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the facts. So throughout the pandemic, Trump has made vast amounts of statements reassuring the public that he has the virus under control, however downplays it entirely. By the end of March, only 32 out of the 50 states had locked down. Trump had suggested injecting people with antibacterial and taking a random malaria drug to cure coronavirus, because he has been right a lot. That's in quotation marks. Yeah. Being right a lot.
I think with a leader in a situation like this, you want a balance of someone who's going to be straight to the point with you and tell you how it is, but not to the point of some are going to drown in the rain.
or
And also-
I'm right, so
Exactly, someone who's going to reassure you. You don't. That's just two ends of the spectrum there, and I just think it's shocking.
yeah. I think those two especially should really feel responsible.
This is what they're going to go down in history for. They're going to be the
Yeah.
leaders of that country during the time of the coronavirus pandemic.
And do we think that they did a good job?
I mean, in terms of Brazil and the USA, it speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it makes me feel lucky because I was born in a place that just doesn't have. I would call it corrupt, really,
Yeah.
because it's just not fair on the people. They're not looking after the people. Their sole job is to look after the people, and they're just not doing the job properly.
Yeah.
So yeah, right. What's next one? I think we're starting to look at a few more of the better ones. So you know how to pronounce this. That's.
Don't ask me to pronounce that.
We're not going to pronounce that name. This is the President Prime Minister.
Can't tell you.
China's leader. So initially, China covered up the emergence of coronavirus, which could have made the virus easier to contain if they alerted other countries sooner. However, they quarantined millions in Wuhan and put the spread of COVID-19 in China at a halt, which we know they did from November, December until it broke out. So they actually did a pretty decent job to control it for the time that they did. According to recorded figures, we know China's population is over a billion, about 1.3 billion. Apparently only 4,364 people in China, where it was like created, essentially, where it mutated into humans, have died from the disease. Only 4,364 in their 1.3 billion people big population. Their death toll is below 5,000. There's a number of reasons this could be. Oh, the dog's going mental. There's a number of reasons this could be, and that is they just didn't record the figures because it was hard. It's hard to tell what's killing people when it's like an invisible killer essentially. And then, I mean, the other reason is that they're just corrupt and they haven't shared their proper figures with anybody. But I think it's more likely that they just didn't record the figures properly, in all honesty.
They have no need to, really. They don't want to cooperate with the rest of the world. They're not, they don't have a reason to share those figures or to record them. They don't want it to see. They don't want it to seem it's their fault.
I think it's a tricky one. No, they don't want it to look like it's their fault. I mean, we've got here that new studies show that the death rate in China could have been 14 times bigger than that number, 4,364, than they recorded. But that is, did they record more and are they not telling people, or...
I shouldn't think they recorded it.
I don't think they recorded it either. I mean, it was invisible to start with.
But I feel like every country has a duty to record those deaths because that's so important for the rest of the world on how they handle it.
Yeah, of course it is.
And they just don't care.
New Zealand, which was one of the better ones. Again, not a leader's name that I can pronounce unless you want to give it a go.
I'll just say Arden.
Okay. So New Zealand locked down on March 25th, which was 2 days after us, and there have been 22 deaths in New Zealand. Arden has shown to be good in crisis, as she knows during the Christchurch attacks and the eruption of White Island. That's pretty good. 22 deaths.
I mean, no deaths, I don't want to say it's impressive. It's no deaths are good, but, they've smashed it, basically.
I mean, I did further research into that and I had a look at the population of New Zealand, which is 4.8 million people.
Yeah.
And it is also one of the most sparsely populated, with only 18 people per square kilometre. And when we were talking about us being sat in this house now, there's easily more than 18 people in the houses around me, let alone the kilometre square around me. So yeah, that's probably, I think that's what's done it for New Zealand more than anything.
Yeah.
They locked down 2 days after us, and I feel like we locked down late, but we were in Europe, which was the epicenter of the outbreak for quite
And I don't know
time.
when the first case was in New Zealand, do you?
I don't know.
Because
but
it's all relative to when the first case was.
yeah, I mean, exactly. And if anybody knows that, maybe there's someone from New Zealand watching who wants to give us some more information. Anybody that gives us information that's relevant, I'll love heart that, and that can sit at the top of the comments for everybody else to see. Alright, so let's move on to...
No, let's not try.
Let's not try that
it.
one. But yeah, Taiwan. So prisoners have been making masks. It's an interesting strategy in Taiwan.
I didn't know that, actually.
I mean, I think it's interesting. Would it make you a bit nervous if prisoners were making masks? I mean, I'm sure they'd do a good job.
What could go wrong? I'm sure they'd be regulated.
Do you
You know,
reckon?
they must. Well, I don't know how Taiwan work. I don't know much about the country, but
It's a good strategy, I think. It gives it's working towards a positive solution instead of just letting the prisoners sit there, especially when in the prisons, which most people probably haven't thought about, the prisoners have got to be kept 2 meters distance as well. It's from the guards as well. These are
Well, I think
people
there's
that
been
don't
this-
normally want to
yeah.
follow the rules are now having to make that effort to follow the rules.
I think there's been disruption in prisons everywhere because families haven't been allowed to come in and visit and things. So at least they're doing something. You know, Taiwan have used to do something productive, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. So Taiwan's close economic and cultural correlations should have made it extremely susceptible to the coronavirus, yet it had 7 deaths and only 448...
440 cases will that be?
I think that's supposed to be 448 cases. After the SARS crisis, Taiwan became quite prepared, and now they have an
Epidemiologist.
Thanks. As a vice president, so that explains a lot. And what is probably the most fascinating thing about when we're comparing all these other countries is Taiwan's population is 23.78 million people. It's about just under half the population of the UK, or half the population of England. It's smaller than England, I think, in its size. It's an island, like New Zealand. But its population density is 673 people per kilometre squared. That's a lot of people to be crammed in. You'd struggle to keep your distance with that many people in that space. They're going to be living in a lot like in London, but high-rise buildings. You're not going to be able to keep your distance.
No.
Really. That disease should have spread.
Well, I'd say out of all the countries we've listed so far, bearing in mind the population density, they've probably managed it the best. And bearing in mind how close they are to China.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is one for when we're looking about the future and what we can do in the future. They're definitely one of the best ones to look at. Another good one to look at, which I've looked at in my research, is Germany. So this is Angela Merkel, and she said it's serious, take it seriously. She did, so they did too. Testing began right from the get-go. Germany jumped right over the phase of denial, anger and disingenuousness, which we've seen elsewhere. The country's numbers are far below its European neighbours, and their deaths are 2,673.
I think that's a really good one to compare us to, in the sense that
I think that's the best one to compare.
Yeah, they've got a similar kind of, culture, like society, way of life, and their population is it's like twice the size of ours, I think, and they've had a third of the deaths, which speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think that's they just. She's been good, Merkel, as well, for Germany. And I think she's going soon, isn't she? I'm not entirely sure on that, but if she is, then this is one of the last things she'll do. And for sure, I'm sure Germany are...
Yeah, talk about going down in history,
the last one we're going to talk about is, I don't know if you can pronounce this one?
Not sure, you'll have to do that one.
Well, let's just call him Johnson. Boris Johnson himself had coronavirus, as we know. He had a kid as well during the time, I guess. So in the UK, this is the UK, this isn't England.
Yeah.
44,131 people in the UK have died of the coronavirus, and as lockdown measures are starting to ease in the UK, the general public are urged to stay alert and follow social distancing measures. Good strategy, social distancing measures and staying alert.
I wouldn't say that the strategy is as severe as the issue.
Well, we'll get into that. I think after looking at all those different countries, there's two main factors that I can see. The first one is population density. The second one is geographical location. Islands, apart from us, which we'll discuss, have done better. They've got a natural border to inland countries. Counter argument for that would be Germany, because they're generally landlocked. I think they are. So they don't have any ocean on any side of them. And so what did we do wrong? Because we're an island and we've got the 4th highest amount of deaths in the world. That's if other countries that aren't as reliable are counting their numbers correctly.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just go with that. The 4th most deaths in the world. What did we do wrong?
I think there's a few things. I think there's things we did right and things we did wrong. But in terms of things we did wrong, I think the testing was a huge problem. It just didn't come in soon enough. It still isn't even into the capacity that it should have been. The countries like you said, Germany, all these countries have that was one of the first priorities they made, and it just wasn't for us. There was no ability to get tested. Even NHS staff were struggling to get tested. Never mind the wider public. There was also a massive lack of PPE. Yeah,
and I mean it's the whole argument that the scientists were saying, is PPE that important? Like, do we actually need to wear masks? And I mean, for them to then come out and say 2 weeks ago that masks must be worn on public transport by everyone, they've completely shifted their mind. They needed to say that from the start.
Yeah.
I don't know why it took them so long for them to come to the conclusion that masks actually do help.
Yeah.
I mean, they imported masks from Turkey. Did they import loads of masks? A lot, like millions of masks, and they were all shit basically. So they didn't import.
Yeah.
Like, I think we couldn't use any of those masks. So
I think
a lot of mistakes been made, isn't there?
Yeah, a lot of there's a lot of slip. They have done good things, but it's inexcusable for a government. It's a team of the most experienced leaders and scientists and politicians, the most experienced of everyone in that field, come together. I feel like the mistakes they've made aren't acceptable. It's not been. You're right. It's not been the worst country in the world, but for that group of people to make those mistakes, I just think is really bad. And the influence they've led by as as individuals.
Do you feel let down?
Yeah.
Really? I've not thought about that before.
100% I feel let down.
I feel like I would like to be in that position. I'd like to be in the position where I've got all those people around me and we'd sit at a table. What can we do? Here's a strategy. Why won't that strategy work?
Yeah.
That's basically what we're going to do later.
A lot of the strategies they've come up with.
It's not two A-level students sat there.
No, that's what I mean.
They've got degrees, they've got experience.
They are in this country, they are the best people supposedly to be doing it. And it's not, it doesn't matter that, some mistakes will be, I understand that it's a new thing, they're not going to do everything perfectly. But a lot of the strategies they've come out with, literally immediately, I don't know about you, but in our family we've gone, does that make sense? And straight away, everyone sort of doesn't that contradict everything's contradictory or doesn't make a lot of sense. And for us to think that straight away or within 24 hours of them announcing it, they should have planned and thought of these things before.
Right Prime Minister for the job?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know the answer to the question because...
He's not the wrong Prime Minister for the job. I know that because look at other world leaders and look at the catastrophe.
He's not the worst leader for the job.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he's not the wrong
he's not the
one.
worst one that we could have. We could have had...
We could have had Trump.
Exactly. We could have had our own.
Yeah.
I think...
But out of the leaders we had for the election in December, you know, at the time, is he who I would have voted for? Possibly not. But is out of the choice we had, if we knew this coronavirus was coming, it's who would you have, you know, it's not who you would have voted for in December, it's who you would have voted for in December knowing this was coming. And that's interesting because I think I would have voted for two different people. I couldn't vote in December, but I think it would have been two different votes for me. But obviously it's really difficult.
Well, when we talk about what the UK did well, if we were to focus on Boris, I think he's got this ability to build a team spirit. He's on social media and he's trying to get people to come together. You know, we're a democracy at the end of the day. He cannot tell you to stay inside. They eventually had to start putting police restraints and things in place where the police can get involved. But the main strategy was to get the British public to choose to stay at home, to look after each other, rather than say you are staying at home, because we're a democracy at the end of the day. You don't want to tell your people you're doing this, even if it is to protect them. I think he should have told people to start doing what they're told, but you don't want to be hated either, and it's a really fine line between telling the public what they need to do whilst not pissing them off, because you don't want them to go, well, I'm not doing what you're telling me, because 40% of the country didn't vote for him, or 40% of the voting public didn't vote for him. So for them to listen to him, I mean, it's hard. There's a fine line there between getting people on side, especially when you've got people who are against you just because of your political beliefs.
I think that was part of the problem, was that he was only elected in December, and I remember when I was watching the election campaigns and things, it was all from the Conservative Party was all so Brexit focused, and you know, from the other parties, you know, I watched the majority of them, it was kind of, you know, there was a massive emphasis on Brexit, but it was kind of finding out what life will be like with them as leaders after Brexit, or after the Brexit situation is over. And he was very much, you know, any question anyone asked about anything else, it was always led back to Brexit. And I remember thinking, what is his plans after that? What is the world going to look like? And we left the EU on January the 31st, and the first case of coronavirus came to the UK on January the 31st. And he was just I think he was so distracted with Brexit and so focused on that was his main aim. And so it should have been. A lot of people getting really impatient. Yeah. But as it's a lot for one man, but the thing is, you've got to remember, it's not, the government isn't made of one man. There should have been a team of people focused on the coronavirus.
That's why his job is so tough, because he's the one that people are going to point the finger at. Unless you're educated enough to realise that the government is actually a group of people. Yeah. It's a table of people, a cabinet. I
wouldn't want his job.
Point the finger. Yeah. I mean, I'd want his job just for the fact that I could sit at the top of that table and I've got all these people experienced around me, and you should be able to get the best amount of information just over a conversation out of these people, and then be able to make such an educated decision from that. Mm-hmm. So I picture myself top of the table, all these people sat around me. Mm-hmm. This is completely new to most of them. They do not have the experience to share with me. There's one group that I could sit here and blame more than Boris, and that's the scientists. He was only going off the scientific advice. So when people say we should have gone into lockdown sooner, which I agree with, I don't know if it's really the government or whether it's, I mean, there's the health minister who's part of the government, but I think the scientists just needed to be, they said they were waiting, and you stick with them, don't you? You say, well, I agree that we should have waited for the curve to start going up, but I think the curve was already up. It was invisible. It was there. The deaths just weren't. The deaths followed 2 weeks later. But if Italy went into lockdown, if we knew a hurricane was coming, I've stolen this analogy. If we knew a hurricane was coming, we'd prepare for it. Or if we knew floods were coming, we'd put up the flood defences. Why didn't we put up the defences when we knew this was coming? That's my question.
I agree with the analogy, but I don't blame the scientists. I don't at all, because I think you're right with when they stand up at the conference or whatever, the daily press conference, the scientists are saying the things like, we're waiting. And I think the main reason they said for waiting, which I found quite bizarre, was that they thought the sooner they put us in, that we just wouldn't listen, that we would like disobey the rules and come out of it quickly. We're the UK, we want to go to pubs and stuff. And I don't think that was... I think you've got to remember that these people have all sat in the meeting before. Just because the scientists are saying it, I don't know if those ideas did come from... I don't know. You
don't know where it comes from, do you? You can only go from what you've seen in the
I think the scientists
media.
are more likely to be the ones that have said, the facts, this is when it's coming, this is the amount of deaths I'm looking at, look, this is the peak, blah, blah, blah. And then the government around, the government are the ones trying to protect the economy, not the scientists. And that was a massive reason for not shutting down earlier to protect the economy. Which it should be a priority.
Well, that comes from it being a Conservative government as well. Do you reckon if it was a Labour government, we'd
if it was a Labour government, we'd be in a different position. But
do you reckon?
I don't know. I'm not saying it would be a better or worse.
No,
but
it would definitely be different. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, the whole furlough scheme.
Oh, I think it's amazing.
That's probably one of the most left-wing decisions from a right-wing government ever, because they've just helped the people. I mean, we both got furloughed, didn't we? You got furloughed, so we can't sit here complain. I'll complain when I'm paying it off in a few years' time. I'm like, oh god, why am I paying £2.50 for a chocolate bar in the shop because the tax is so high on everything? Yeah. But for the time being, it's had its...
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound ignorant. Obviously, there were still people... there were people who were just about getting by on 100% of their wage, and 80% really made a lot of people struggle. But, and some people had to then try and take up second jobs, and then obviously there is such a limit on jobs. It's all a difficult situation, but I think for what the government did with that was the best they could have done, the 80%. I think that was really, really good.
Probably the best.
And it's always, everyone's going to...
You don't know how big their pot is. You don't know how deep that pot goes.
But everyone's lost something in this pandemic, whether it's a holiday or a family member or a job, whatever it is. And I think everyone's sort of got to take, it just... those people who had to take up second jobs or who were made redundant or whatever... that's not... I wouldn't blame that on the government, completely. No. I would just blame that on the situation.
I think the furlough scheme was probably one of the best things they did.
Me too.
And the government grants as well for businesses that have just come out, £10,000 grants, and £25,000 grants for, I think pretty much every business, whether they're struggling or not, I think have got a right to the grant. Which I think is good, and that is obviously more of a Conservative idea with it being business based. So what you say? Everybody's lost somebody, or everybody's lost something. Whether it's a person, whether it's a holiday. Have people forgotten? People going back to normal. We go out on the roads. The roads are busy. The shops are busy.
I don't think. The beaches are busy.
The beaches are ridiculous.
I don't think people... I don't think they've forgotten. I don't think the people are to blame for all the going out. And I think there's a small minority that have just gone, do you know what, forget it, I don't care. There is a minority of people that do think that. But I think a lot of people who are going to the beaches and things, at the moment the government are allowing pubs, allowing beaches. And although I'm choosing not to go to the pub or the beach or any of these kind of high-risk places... If that's allowed, why wouldn't you? Apart from that, I don't want to because I feel like it's still risky. But by the government allowing that, I don't think it's the people's fault to then go and cram in. And,
but I mean, there's been... when I see somebody in the shops wearing a mask, they might be old, or they might be any age really. If they're wearing a mask, I'll keep my distance from them, because that by wearing that mask, it's showing everybody that they still care for their own safety.
Well, the mask is to protect other people, aren't they?
Yeah, essentially.
But it's showing that they
Not
still have the
everybody's
awareness.
educated on that though, are
Yeah,
they? So.
they should be. That's another point that is.
No, it's not been. It's same with Brexit. People, when it came to the Brexit vote, people weren't educated on what they were voting for. So, yeah, the government do need to, as a whole, need to get better at educating the people on the decisions that they are making.
Part of me thinks that's an active choice, though, not to put all the information out there.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to speak to Brad in a bit, and I think his answer to the selfish question will be very different. He's been quite vocal on social media about
And I would agree with him.
I think it is wrong. I do agree with him.
What people are doing in what sense?
Just the beat, that picture of the beach.
Yeah. So do you think, which person's fault is it? Because you could go to the beach and not realise it was going to be turn up, and then you turn away when it's a certain amount. At what point of busyness do you then turn away? Because you're allowed to go, everyone has the right to be at the beach.
Of course they do.
So that's what I don't
feel
understand.
like it's not whether they've got the right, they don't care. They're not scared of this anymore.
Yeah. I just think the government should have regulated all along how many people at the beach is, or that sort of thing.
Yeah. Did we start lockdown too late? For this, I've got Italy started on the 9th of March.
That's what I was going to say.
We were 2 weeks behind them.
We got our first
23rd of
case
March.
the day after or the day before they got their first case of coronavirus.
Did we?
Our first cases were literally a day apart.
It comes back to that hurricane analogy.
And they locked down 2 weeks before.
If the hurricane's coming, we should have been locking down, ready for it, preparing for it. Mm-hmm. So I think that is why the numbers were so high, because I remember I was driving somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but on the radio they had the coronavirus news on.
Yeah.
And they made a one of the news basically said somebody in Salford has now been diagnosed or tested positive with the coronavirus, which now means that there is somebody in every county across the UK with the disease. For me, that's more than just one person in every county. Mm-hmm. It's an invisible killer. There's people in every county, and they've travelled from county to county. It's spread, right? It's done the damage. So that makes me question whether is it population control? Have governments purposely not protected their people?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not a very kind of conspiracy-driven person. I don't look for the alternative thing. I don't often believe the alternative, reasons behind things. So it's not. I kind of haven't questioned it, and I don't think it. I think it's genuine. I think obviously they talked about herd immunity, which is fair enough. But I don't think they've tried. I don't think it's population control, trying to kill off some of the population.
Well, I mean, it's just an interesting talking point, because I think they could have done better. That's why it makes you think, is it a conspiracy? Because they should have done better. Not that they should have done, but they could have.
I just think it's about priorities. The priorities were not in the right. Their priorities with the economy, which is about having a conservative government, isn't it? I suppose.
I mean, I think the reason we've reopened is because of the economy.
100%.
They made it out like they were on their knees, like edge of recession sort of.
Well, and
thing.
to be fair, a lot of business. I know. A lot of my friends work, and their workplaces were on the brink of closing down or redundancies and things. It was getting to the point where things did need to start reopening. I don't know whether it should have been more phased, or I don't know. Yeah,
it's a tricky one. I think in the future something needs to change realistically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, going back onto what the UK did right, I think it was definitely a good strategy to build that morale. I felt like at the start there was such team effort to stay inside, stay at home, stay alert, protect the NHS. That was the slogan essentially for the coronavirus. They created a slogan for it, and at every press conference you'd see on the front of the pedestal that stand up and talk on, that slogan was always there. It was always prominent. Every speech that Boris did,
that slogan was really good.
I thought it was really good, and I feel like people got on board. The clap for the NHS, the first few times that happened, I don't know if your street was as lively as mine, but my street sort of woke up to that. Like, even with VE Day, everybody was out keeping the distance from what I saw anyway. I mean, I haven't seen pictures online. I'm sure somebody could prove me wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, keeping the distance, community spirit, and just, we've been able to talk. Everybody's been talking, like we've got Zoom. It's been
really
the centre of the conversation for the full 3 months that it's been in lockdown and before.
Well, it's really interesting because my auntie was saying the other day that this is the first thing that's new for all of us. My normally everything I'm going through now as I grow up, my parents or grandparents have all gone through before, and they can offer me advice, we can talk about. But this is the first thing that's new to everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the clap. I don't know. I remember the first time I went out and did the clap, and it was like my street was really lively with it as well. And I remember I got like a little, like you said, you felt quite like emotional about it as well, and I did.
It was nice.
It was
sweet.
really like, it was, but I think for me it was more of a like, wow, this is really happening. This is a really big thing. It's the whole of our street, and but I don't know. I wasn't convinced that I felt that it supported the NHS in the way that I would have preferred. I don't know. The clap felt a bit kind of, I don't know. It just felt a bit. Is that what they need? If they're going out there, they're literally, it's such a risk. I felt scared going to the shops. They're going to these hospitals every day with not enough PPE, and
what they didn't need a clap. They needed a. I mean, Brad put on his story about when he saw that picture of them all on the beach. He put on his story about your clap. He said your claps meant nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because people are just not following. You're right.
The claps mean a lot.
But that comes back to the questions link in, because people have forgotten. It's so frustrating, especially working, and you see
my
the
work's
people.
Not been my. No. I think
we see different things, but in the coming weeks, your work will start to reboot again, and I'm sure you'll see more people come in and all right. So that's brought us to the end of part 1. We're going to take a break and we're going to refresh, and then we'll come back and we're going to hear what you guys have to say out in public and online. Then we're going to discuss the strategies that our government put in place to try and prevent the coronavirus, and we're going to evaluate that. We're going to put forward some of our own strategies and we're going to evaluate that. So that'll bring us to a conclusion, hopefully. We might not come to a conclusion, it's a very broad topic, but that's all to come after the break. However, during the break, Danika's going to tell us about a brand that she's been working with. This isn't a sponsored video, but the company is a really good company from what you say. And Danika is a proud ambassador, so take a listen and we will be right back after this break.
So I've just joined an amazing brand called Topical, which is primarily a skincare brand. It's 100% pure plant extracts, completely vegan and cruelty-free. Also, every £50 purchase funds a school day in countries such as Cambodia and Nepal for children who wouldn't otherwise have education. So I think it's just a really great cause and a really lovely company, and I'm just really excited to work for them.
Alright, so we're back. Before the break, we discussed the facts and the scale and scope of the coronavirus and how it's affected all these other countries and how they've dealt with it. We also discussed whether it was a good approach or not, and answered loads of questions surrounding how society has coped and dealt with the coronavirus. So me and Danika have sat here for about 50 minutes now and had our say, but now it's time for you to have your say. So we went out in public to ask the random people on the street what they thought of the situation. Alright, so we're now in town. We're about to get out and go into the centre where we're going to ask a load of people the questions I want to ask them. It is raining, however, so I don't know how many people are going to actually stop and want to talk to us whilst it's raining. But yeah,
Let's go.
All right, before anybody says anything, I know the audio on this segment is particularly rubbish. I don't really want to scrap the segment because I still want to let the public have their say. I thought it was interesting what people had to say. So just bear with it this time, and I promise I will get the audio fixed for the next time.
So just wondering whether the UK did a good job at dealing with the coronavirus.
Yes and no. Yes. Economically. No. The health side with the mixed messages.
Did we handle it well as a country, as a people? Did we handle this situation correctly?
The people, I guess, it was kind of just more, everyone was acting like we kind of sorted it well, but no one really did. Yeah. Everyone was going against the guidelines and being all secret about it, but then no one really cared.
Well, we're out of town today, and there's a lot of people saying quite a lot.
Oh God, yeah.
We've seen them following the rules, the guidelines.
No.
I do think they've done a good job. I don't think anybody knew how to handle it because we've never done that before. No one's ever been in a pandemic before in this lifetime. I don't think people follow the rules. In the whole school-way system, they can't do that. So I think it comes down to people being responsible for your own health. If you don't want the virus, follow the rules. If you're not bothered about following the rules, then you're just going to die from viruses.
Do you think that the UK did a good job?
No.
So why?
Because the government's for shambles.
How come we don't?
Because Boris Johnson doesn't listen to anyone.
Nothing. So what did he do wrong as part of his government then?
Well, he didn't look down early enough. He didn't listen to the EU countries and was it China and all that. He knew it was coming. He done that, and it was like, oh, let's have herd immunity and all that. No, herd immunity doesn't work. And he opens up too soon. Scotland stayed on for 2 weeks. So we didn't have the.
Should we still be in lockdown now?
No, I think it should have come out like when Scotland come out. I think Nicola Sturgeon done a really good job. She addressed the public in the country really, really well, and I think she had the people of Scotland like in her thoughts and stuff. I just thought she was really good leader.
Germany did the same with Angela Merkel. So would you say that maybe female world leaders have done a better job?
Yeah, because New Zealand's done really well as well. Very left wing, not right wing politics.
Very true. The UK is obviously, with the rest of the world, has still been in lockdown for the last 3 months because of coronavirus. Do you think that the UK has handled the situation correctly?
Not particularly well, no. Not really following suit other nations within Europe and the rest of the world.
So following them would have made our situation better?
I think so, yeah. I've saw quite a few videos on social media, the government advised against wearing masks.
So do you think we should all be wearing masks?
Yeah. Which is, they have now taken the steps to make people through the door.
You've got to wear masks in the shops.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I mean, why wasn't that taken? Do you think that should have been taken earlier?
Yeah, most definitely.
What about the masks situation that's come about now?
I think they've done a poor job of that. They need to be more definitive at the beginning.
The masks I'm okay with, since I work at Pandora, so we've had them since we started. That's how we all to wear masks, so I've been wearing them for 8 hours a day, doing it properly. I know some people struggle with them. It's another one of them, you encourage your own safety. If you don't want to wear them, don't check it.
I think the public did a good job of making sure they did
I think a majority of people did, but I do think there are still some people who don't do a good job, and I think they just don't take it seriously.
You say people are just disregarding the fact that it ever happened.
I think some people are. I think now that things are starting to reopen, I think people have kind of forgotten how bad it was, and it doesn't seem to be in the press as much about the cases and deaths. So I think people are forgetting, and then there are some people who are still dying quite well.
We have to get back into normal life. You know what I mean? Like we have to. Life is never going to be as normal as it was. It's always going to be changed now. But the closest thing we can get to normal life is going back to the shops, everyone getting back to work, just going about your day like nothing really happening.
Have the people handled it well? They follow the guidelines?
I think in some circumstances people have, but then obviously in others people don't really necessarily think the virus particularly people maybe our age group, but obviously the older generation who were more at risk.
Should the younger people be held accountable?
Yeah, I do think so. I think people have so much responsibility that we should take into account.
Will there be a second wave?
hope not. Maybe, you never know, but I hope there won't be, because like all mum and dad are in a care home and we've not been able to see them like for months, have we, and stuff. So, but they've done an amazing job. And to blame the care homes recently was an absolute disgrace, because they kept them all safe and looked after them and worked really hard. And we would never think of blaming them. You know, because they didn't even have any deaths in their care homes because they were absolutely fantastic.
Depends who you ask, it depends where you are, but how big are we talking of second wave? Like as big as the first, yeah. No. I would hate to think that there would be another, but I just think with how everything's gone down, not everyone's that stupid. No, to call it a second wave. Yeah. Like if everyone keeps to the precautions, we won't have a second wave, and I refuse to believe that everyone is that stupid.
Really? Oh, I don't know.
A lot of people, don't get me wrong, I can see that, but everyone...
I'll be working customer service and it's not, people aren't doing it at all. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if it doesn't spread again.
It's just disappointing.
It is disappointing.
It really is.
Especially when we're all sat in trying to do what we're told, yeah.
I think it's always going to be inevitable because of flu season. So the flu's not going to get you, coronavirus is going to get you over the winter. So I think we'd be stupid almost a little bit if we didn't think there was going to be another flare up of some description.
It would be a shame if there was.
No, it would be.
Most definitely. I do think we will be back in lockdown in the winter.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Not many people think we're back into lockdown.
I'm not surprised at that, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people think we're going to get away with it.
I think there'll definitely be one. I think they'll be geared up to deal with it better, but I don't think they'll put things back in lockdown. So,
not at all.
Yeah, I think they might do a regional one, but I don't think they'll put things back into it.
So what could be improved for future time what's to happen in the second wave?
I think stricter guidelines on social distancing, wearing masks, and limiting the amount of people in shops and bars and restaurants. And I think the general rule that you stick to rather than mixed messages.
Did the media make the situation worse or better?
Worse.
Yeah. How can you make it worse?
Because I think we dwell too much on the negatives of things, and no matter what the government did, I think the media poked holes in it. But nobody actually came out and said. Nobody in the media said this would be a better way of doing it. They were just more focused on disregarding anything the government said. I don't think they were supportive enough, because when it first happened, I don't think anybody realised how bad it was going to be. So I think they could have been more supportive rather than negative.
As a media, has it played a good role or bad?
I think it's played a good role. I think it's highlighted the dangers of the disease. I think it's made people quite informed of the threats of the disease poses.
What we do in the future and what we need to reflect on this time in order to change our future. What needs to be done right now then? Should the shops be open in this place? Should we all be wearing masks?
Yeah, I think we should all be wearing masks. I don't think the shops should shut again even if we have a second wave. The economy's still got to tick on. You know, if we run out of money as a country, then we're all jobless, we're all stopped. And we go into another recession, so it's better to keep the economy. There's got to be a healthy balance.
Yeah. Is there anything that you did right?
Contributed to more deaths.
Maybe, yeah.
I think the furlough scheme was really good because you got furloughed, didn't you? And that was really good. And I think also the NHS, but that was right before the government come in and they tried to like squash it, and now like not charging the NHS, giving them more wages and stuff, and charging them car parking and stuff. It's absolutely disgrace. You need to congratulate them.
100%.
Yeah.
So the clap was a good idea.
Yeah, the clap was a good idea, but also give them a wage increase as well. Yeah. And that's all carers, not just NHS.
Alright, brilliant.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, so we've just been out in public to ask the public what they thought of the whole coronavirus situation. We're going back now. It's raining, so not many people wanted to stop, and not everybody wanted to be on camera. We're probably not in the best location for it, so next time we'll probably go like to a city centre somewhere. But yeah, it went alright. We didn't get that many opinions. I did ask a lot of people, and I asked a range of people as well, but they weren't that interested. So yeah, we're going to go back now, and that's it. Good. Alright, so now that we've seen what people out on the street have got to say, I put out an Instagram poll, which we will be doing for every topic. So if you'd like to have your say, make sure you go follow me on Instagram. It'll come up on the screen now, and it'll also be as a link in the description.
So what I'm going to do is we're going to have a look at what the polls are saying about this topic. The first one we've got is, did the UK handle COVID-19 well / correctly? What do you think? What did we handle it well?
It's like we said before, I think there was elements that they handled well, elements they handled badly, but overall,
If you had to vote yes or no.
No. Wait, did they handle it well? No.
Okay, I'm not sure how I vote. I think for a first time ever to be put in this position, I think they didn't do terribly. I can tell you what I think I'd do, but I can't say I'd do it for certain.
We were warned
I would probably
about
vote,
a pandemic.
Yeah.
They should have had these preparations in place. But anyway, go on, what did you say?
I agree. We were warned. I would probably vote yes for that one. The poll said 67% of people said yes.
They did handle it well.
We handled it well. 33% of people actually said no. That's an interesting one.
That is, I wouldn't have expected that.
I didn't
especially
expect
because your following is primarily our age.
Yeah.
You would have. I would expect the majority of our age would say they didn't handle it well. I don't think they did, and I don't think
there's things they could have done better for certain.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard yes or no question.
Mm.
Okay, so the next one we've got is, will there be a second wave?
I don't know. I mean, they said, some people have said this is the second wave. The numbers are, our number was above 1 in London again a couple of days ago. It's just not as the media is portraying it as big as obviously the first one. So if this is the second wave, but if in terms of another massive thing like before, I don't think there will be. No. I just think it will be like this.
So what would you vote, yes or no?
Yeah.
I would vote yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at history, especially the Spanish flu, which the first wave was around the same time as now,
yeah.
And then in the October, the second wave actually came back and hit harder than the first.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at history and what history's got to say about it, history says you're screwed, prepare for the second wave,
yeah.
And I think we should. And so does Instagram apparently, because will there be a second wave? 70% of people believe that there's going to be a second wave. 142 people have seen that as well. There's about 60 to 70 people voted. So we've got a nice amount of. It's not just my age range either. I've got younger people and slightly older people on there as well. So, and family who are older. Okay. So next, should lockdown have begun earlier?
Yeah.
Do you reckon?
No question.
Okay. Obviously, I'm going to say yeah as well. But we knew this vote was going to be, obviously people are going to say yes to no. How much do you think it is yes to no? Percentage wise?
I bet at least 85%.
85% yes?
Yeah.
We had 88% yes and 12% no.
Yeah.
Same question, really, just flipped. Should lockdown have been lifted earlier?
No.
No? Should we still be in lockdown now?
For me, we're still in lockdown.
Well, yeah, slightly.
So,
it's not officially been.
It's no,
lifted.
But should it be? Should the restrictions have been eased earlier? No, I think the restrictions have been done at a good time, easing.
Yeah, it feels so fast though.
It does feel fast. It made more phased, but in general.
Everything they just said open.
It's not
everything's
perfect.
Just open.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's gyms and stuff. People are saying, well, if restaurants can open, why can't gyms open? But it's just common sense. In gyms, everyone's sweating, exhaling, and inhaling more. It's 100%. I think they've done it all right.
That one was 10% yes. We should have lifted earlier.
Really?
90% no.
Okay.
Which is such a landslide. Next one. Is there a next one? No, I think that's it for the polls. But I asked, what did the UK do right? And some of the responses, because we discussed this earlier, these are the same questions we've already discussed.
Mm-hmm.
I asked what did the UK do right, and some of the responses I got was, I think we did the best we could in an unknown situation,
mm-hmm.
which is why I think most people have probably voted yes, we did well.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing,
mm-hmm.
literally nothing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think people have the right to feel like that because a lot of these people will have, like, a lot of people will have lost, you know, I have several family members who've had it, so I think a lot of people have lost family members, lost friends and things.
I think as soon as one person, just in the whole country, it's a failure.
Yeah.
But in the same sense, it is a disease. It's going to disease away, if you like. It's going to do its natural course, its natural selection, and it's very hard to stop. It's like getting in the way of God, really. Like, we don't believe in God, but it's hard to stop. It's just, you want to see some effort. And I think when people say nothing, it's because they haven't seen an effort.
Yeah.
We've got lockdown measures once we actually started. So
yeah. Okay.
They're easing things at a decent pace.
Yeah, agree with that.
But
decent pace, not perfect pace.
It's not perfect. It needs to be slower, I think.
Yeah.
We've got another person that says absolutely nothing in bold caps.
It's fair.
Very, very.
I mean, like I was saying to you in the break, that my opinion, the only thing they've done really well is the furlough scheme. I wouldn't say there's really much else.
Well,
for me,
someone said the furlough scheme on here.
Yeah.
The whole stay-at-home thing was done correctly. I think so, and it definitely was like a team spirit, like we discussed earlier.
There's always going to be, no matter what, people who go against it.
Oh yeah, of course.
I think it was a minority.
That was never going to be a one. I mean, that for me, that could have been 100%. Yes, we should have gone into lockdown earlier.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be pretty close to 100%,
Same.
but there's always going to be somebody that disagrees.
Yeah.
There was pressure, but they done a good enough job to put as least pressure on the NHS. See, I think they did, because they never said we're going to try and reduce the deaths as much, but it's like a knock-on effect. By taking the pressure off the NHS, they can cope with more people, which reduces the number of deaths. So the strategy was to take the pressure off the NHS by keeping people inside and delaying them from catching the disease. You're not going to stop it from spreading necessarily. It's natural selection at the end of the day. You're not going to stop it, but what you can reduce is the number of deaths by upping the quality of the healthcare.
I think it was good because the NHS never got really overwhelmed like it has in some countries like Italy, but you know, in terms of, I don't think there was enough support for the NHS directly from the government in terms of not enough ventilators, not enough PPE.
Yeah, they need enough that support.
I don't think nurses are paid enough, but that's another story.
Yeah, well, that's for another day.
Yeah, just in terms of direct
link
support.
in the description to the next podcast for like a year in the future when we get around to making that one. The government have been okay-ish, but the public have been awful.
What do you think? I don't know.
I'd agree. I think the public, because now I work in customer service where I'm seeing easily 200, 300 people a shift, maybe more. I can't actually tell. There's a lot of people that go through that store. And I think the vast majority of them have been awful. They've been worse after lockdown.
Yeah, for sure.
The way they treat the staff, the way they feel entitled, like they have a right to be there.
Yeah.
We're open because we need to make money, essentially. It's a business, it needs to run.
It's new for
we're
the
not
staff.
open.
Everyone's going to make mistakes.
But we're telling people to leave, essentially, because the safety of the public and for the co-work is more important than somebody getting some food. So, and when they turn around and they're just awful, I can't stand it. I don't mind if they're awful to me because I can take it. I'll absorb it. But it's when they're awful to other people.
It makes you feel awkward stood there.
It's not right, is it? Like a grown man having a go at, like, because we work where I work, there's a lot of young people.
Yeah.
If she's a 16-year-old girl and she's like 4'5", it's hard enough for her to tell you to leave the store.
Yeah.
It's hard enough for me to do it, and some of them are new starters that just started just before lockdown. And they have to go out and tell these people that they need to leave the store because the queue's too big.
Yeah.
So the furlough scheme, we discussed that. What we did right lockdown. Yeah, I think there was a case study with one of the earliest ever diseases in America, where one state locked down and the other state went ahead and had a parade, and the death rate wasn't the same. It wasn't as distant as you'd expect it to be, because one got locked down and the other one went and had a parade. But the graph for the one that went and had a parade literally goes like that, and all their deaths happen in this period of time. The other one looks like that. So they talk about flattening the curve, which is the term we've heard a lot about. And that's basically what lockdown is. That's what quarantining yourself is to flatten that curve. But the deaths go on for ages. It could be over now. According to the studies, lockdown, everything could be over now. We could have just literally let natural selection take its course. All those people would have died. More people would have died without a shadow of a doubt. And the public would be scared. You don't want to you don't want your public to be scared to live in the country that they live in. So anyway, now the last question I asked you guys on social media is, what did the UK do wrong? So we've got not closing the borders / not making those who came into the UK quarantine. I 100% agree with that. The borders should have been shut from day dot, really. Anybody that's English or anybody that lives in the UK, come back. We need you back as soon as you can, really. We're going to test everybody on entry. That should have just been, there's a way of testing somebody to see if they've got the disease. There might not be a cure, but at least we've got the technology to be able to say you've got the disease. Even when the symptoms aren't showing themselves, you can get a blood test and it will tell you whether it's... Just test everybody. I don't see the harm in it. Started too late. Right thing to do, just at the wrong time. Lockdown should have never happened. It should have been optional for those who felt vulnerable.
Joyce, I was actually thinking about this. It sounds like strange because we've not heard that approach before, but by going out, you're not just putting yourself at risk, you're putting, obviously, the whole point is that you're putting other people at risk because you're one of these spreaders. You could have it without knowing, without getting symptoms. But then the only people you're putting at risk is the people who also feel like they're okay to go out, if you know what I mean. If the people who don't want to do it stay inside. So I see where they're coming from. But I feel like that's more of an approach for now. Now that's what people are doing. I'm staying in.
I would still see it as selfish, because all those people that are going out who don't care, which there's a vast majority of, I'd say it's more than 50%, are still passing the disease amongst them. And what that then means is the people that are staying at home, who, because they are worried about their safety,
have to stay home longer.
They have to stay home longer, because that disease is going to float about for a lot longer. It could stay around for a full year.
And also there's the people who are working in in the shops and the supermarkets who don't have a choice. So I don't agree. I see the point.
I see the point.
I just don't. I think
sending us out this early, opening pubs, which is going to be a problem because it's going to put more stress on the NHS due to people getting drunk and being irresponsible.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
I would, because if from the beginning staying in wasn't just like we said then to protect everyone from the virus, it was also to limit the other things people are going into A&E for. No one's going to be at trampoline parks now because they're shut, so there's going to be less injuries there, or injuries anywhere. No one's going out doing all these things.
Well, that was only going to intensify. The disease got worse, more people got the disease. That's exactly what they were going to do. It was going to be shutting down everything. We'll get into that when we look at the strategies, but there's more that they were going to do, more things they were going to put in place, but they just held off because the numbers started to get better. But if those numbers got worse, we were looking at a serious lockdown, like a complete lockdown of the country, which we'll get into in a bit, which is quite interesting to see the extent they take the country to protect the people, which is good. It's a good thing, but we'll get into that in a bit. They let it come into the country. I mean, that's true.
I think it was always going to come in. I don't think they could have. I don't think it was their fault it came in. As an island, it was always going to happen. I think that it all went so really, really fast in terms of
our third member, our third guest.
It all went so fast in terms of when the first cases came in. I mean, I was abroad when the first cases arrived in the UK.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, within, like, so quickly those cases multiplied, and it could have been managed better, I think.
Yeah, as soon as you get that first case, it needs to be action.
Yeah. And the argument is they did try, but...
Well, we'll go into the solutions right after this, and that will explain why they did what they did, and, I mean, what they did. The thing is, you're right, they predicted a pandemic for this year, and they were prepared, just not enough. They had a scheme, it's called the phase, like, we heard a lot about it, the delay phase and the contain phase, but there's more phases, and we'll get into that. They never went into.
I don't think they were prepared enough for other, you know, all the smaller aspects that affected, you know, smaller people. The furlough scheme was great. It was just they come up with that, but, you know, other little things.
Yeah, well, like in like sole traders. Things like that.
They weren't prepared for that.
Yeah, initial testing needed doing.
Oh, 100%. I think that was the biggest failure.
I mean, it's a temperature check. I want to go to Alton Towers. They're temperature checking people on the thing.
Yeah.
I've been checking up on it because I really want to go to Alton Towers, and 37.5 degrees, your body temperature. If your body temperature is above that, they're not going to let you in. That's a normal body temperature, really. The body sits about 36 degrees. I don't know how much it takes for your body to go up.
If it's literally like a degree, like half a degree off, something's not right.
Oh, okay.
So 37.5 is quite high.
Oh, is it? Okay. All right. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah. It doesn't sound high.
No,
yeah.
it doesn't.
No, but
especially when 37 is the norm, like 36, 36.5.
It's like internal body temperature, not like your skin's touch kind of thing.
And then to get through the times, so I'm guessing what Brad means by that is we didn't have enough to get us through. Like, some people have been very lonely.
Yeah.
Some people have been struggling to keep themselves entertained. Like, Brad also made another statement on this question. The news spreading fear, constant draining news, and people not following the rules, plus a lack of support. And I'd agree with that. I think the news have spread fear. I think there's been constant draining news. People have been tuning into the news to look at the death count. So the news have gone, let's show the death count every single day. I stopped looking at it because it's just not necessary to see that number go up it's just not nice to watch a number like that go up, and for it to be shoved in your face the way that the news have.
Yeah, you see, I stopped within a week of lockdown. I stopped watching the news. I just, you know, maybe at the end of every night or even every couple of days or whatever, I'll just sort of check up on what's going on. In our house, we just stopped putting it on because it was repetitive, same thing every day.
It is the same thing, and the number goes up, and it's.
I think it does have to be said, you know, but it's a difficult one.
Anyway, so those last two are from Brad, who is a good mate of ours, but on social media he's been quite vocal about the whole situation. He's got some strong beliefs and strong views, especially about the public. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go and do a phone interview with Brad, and we're going to stick that segment in now. So this is my phone interview with Brad. Hello.
Hiya.
Hi, Brad. You okay?
Yeah.
How's your lockdown going?
Not gonna lie, it is pretty boring. It is pretty boring, isn't it? There's nothing to do.
You know what you need? You need a podcast. That'll keep you interested. That'll give you something to do.
I stand by that. I think I do. I think that's exactly what I need. Thank you.
Alright, so I won't keep you too long because me and Danica have already waffled on for ages. My opinions in that section, really. So I just want to hear your opinion because you've been quite vocal on social media and stuff. So I just want to know how you feel about the whole situation. So I'll give you two questions that you can sort of come back to answer whilst telling me exactly how you feel. And the first one is how you think we've done during the lockdown as a country, as a government. You can talk about other countries if you want to, but yeah, that's the first question. And the second question is how you feel about the general public and whether you think that they've helped the situation or whether they've made the situation worse, whether you think they followed the rules. So let's just hear what you've got to say about it.
Okay. So I'm gonna say think, personally, I know a lot of people have criticised the government. I don't think they've took all the right steps to protect the citizens, but I think in general, we've never had anything like this before happen. So I think that the government have done what they had to do with the time they've been given. It's don't forget, our country is very heavily focused on economy and money, and so I think the reason that we were a bit later than most countries at locking down was due to the fact that at the end of the day, this lockdown is only going to impact us. So I think they had the right intentions. I think it came across that they didn't care, but I think there was a bit of them that were reluctant to do that because of the economy.
Yeah.
And we have seen a bit of a crash.
Do you think they should have not cared about the economy and cared more about the lives of the people in the country? Or do you think there was a fine line and they got it quite close?
I don't think anyone at the time in the early stages of this pandemic knew how bad it would be and how many deaths there would be. There was no estimating how many people would die. The government had to do it, based on the severity of the infection rate, I'm guessing. So I think it wasn't a case of they didn't know how many people would die, so I don't think it was that. I think they don't want people to die because at the end of the day, that's just, I don't know.
I think they knew it was bad. They had predictions that it was going to be bad. Scientists were saying that we'd be lucky to get 20,000 deaths, and obviously it's double that now. So I think they knew that the deaths were going to come. When you say that's the reason they delayed for the economy, I don't know if I can agree with you on that point. I think they might have done, but I also think the scientists told them to wait until, because they were trying to flatten the curve. I'll put that in quotation marks. So, essentially they were waiting for the peak to start before they went into lockdown. And I think what actually happened there was they didn't realise we were already in the peak whilst they were waiting for the peak to actually happen. I think a lot of people had this disease when they didn't even know they had the disease. So the peak was occurring whilst they still saw that it wasn't. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that that's the case, because if they were to put people's lives underneath the economy, I think that's quite disappointing.
I definitely think life should have been prioritised. I think it's disrespectful to people who've been working for this country for many years to feel like they've not been looked after during a very stressful time in probably their lives, probably their whole lifetime. So to think that maybe there was an element of them not caring is a bit a punch to the face.
Definitely. Would you say that there is enough people out there that feel let down and disappointed?
By the government?
Yeah, by their approach.
Yes, definitely. There's definitely been a lot of criticism.
How would you feel about it?
I remember I actually, really embarrassingly, tried to contact Boris Johnson, telling him to lock down the country before it happened. So obviously at the time I was concerned about the people in the country and myself before they took action. So that shows that there was, even myself, there was people that were worried before the government were, which is wrong really, because the government should have been the first to be worried.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they've been given a lot of criticism. However, I think once we come into lockdown, they did the right thing. But I feel like they've completely lost control at the minute.
Especially over the people.
Yeah, the people have gave up.
I mean, I saw that picture that you put on your story about all the people at the beach. It became quite a well spread image. I mean, you're not happy about that, are you?
Not necessarily, no. I think I'm happy with people going out, I'm not happy with. I mean, if you went to the beach and it was that full, surely in your mind you must be thinking, maybe today's not the right day.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay, right. Let's just go then instead and risk it.
Or
I don't know. I think some people are very stuck in the ways and they won't back down because of this virus. But sometimes you've got to give into it as well and say, listen, like today is not the right day. It's very packed. There's still a pandemic. Maybe we should go home and come back another day.
Yeah, I mean the problem is there needs to be somebody there to regulate that because people don't regulate themselves. Like a lot of people I don't think care. Say 50%, 50-50, 50% are worried, 50% are cracking on with life. That's normal. And honestly, I don't know which side I take.
I think most other European countries are much stricter than us.
Oh, 100%.
Well, just not about Corona, but in general. And I think they've handled it better because they have been more strict.
Oh yeah.
They've had police regulated and stuff.
Our government have been mugs really to the people that are just walking around and now like private parties and stuff and yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing actually. I think.
It is embarrassing as a country. So
yeah.
So not happy then.
I think to sum it up, I'm more disappointed in the way that the general public have handled it. I think I had to come off social media. Now I never have to come off social media, but I've had to come off social media for a while, a few weeks back, just because of how grating some of these comments were. It was almost like there was a fight every day, and no one was right. No one was right.
No, it's hard to know who's right. You can't really blame anybody either because it's no one's ever experienced it before. So unless you were to handle it catastrophically wrong, it's hard to blame people because mistakes can be made.
I think trying to uplift the spirits of the country has been appalling. I think it's even the people on Facebook, it's awfully negative.
Yeah.
I struggle to read some of the comments sometimes. It's like there's no optimism in your life anymore. It's quite sad. I feel like we've all hit a stage like that at the minute. However, I think now everything's starting to relax a lot more. I definitely don't know what the future will be, but I can say that I at the minute I'm happier with the way it is because I get to be safe and still have a bit of my life back, which a lot of people have been waiting for a long time. It's been, 4 months?
Yeah, about that.
Which is a very, very long time to stop your life. But I feel like there's still people that need to take precaution, especially the vulnerable. I definitely think that social distancing with friends should go on.
Yeah.
And family, whenever you can. I think it's important just to, and at the end of the day, we've minimised close contact with people from probably around about, in college, like 400 people a day, close contact.
Oh yeah, yeah it was.
To around about 10 a day, maybe,
yeah.
at tops.
Mac, yeah.
So it's like, that is definitely the reason that this, I don't think it will spike, because I feel like we haven't got through the bit of it yet.
What, so you think, you think it's coming again, second wave?
No.
You don't? Really?
I feel like I think it's just going to go waver up and down, because as soon as the government sees it, it's going to go up. Like the drop-down Leicester, it's just going to be an ongoing cycle.
Do you reckon?
I don't think it's ever going to go and then come back up in second wave. I think it's just going to pass its course throughout this year. I think we just got to stay safe and watch ourselves. And as long as you take measures, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, you heard it there, guys. Make sure you do stay safe and socially distance from Brad. Yeah, is that anything else you'd like to say?
No, but how about this? Let's stay positive, because things will get back to normal. Well, hopefully, things start opening up, things get back to normal, and I think there's no more time for negative news. Let's just spread a bit more happiness.
Perfect. Brilliant. Nice message, Brad. Make sure you listen to that because it is important to remain positive. Thank you for talking, Brad. It's been interesting having another opinion, another side of the argument. I'm going to go back to our conversation with me and Danica. So let's go back to that. Cheers, Brad.
See you later. Bye.
Right, so now we're on to some more controversial questions. So we'll be careful on how we answer them, but we're asking them, I mean, for a number of reasons, entertainment purposes, but also because they're quite interesting topics to cover. So, has the media made the situation worse?
I think for the most part, no. And there have been, so it depends what type of media. Obviously, there's so much media that's biased and whatever, but for the majority, my answer would be no.
See, I think every news outlet has done apocalypse news. That's the technical term for it.
Yeah.
They've all had these ridiculous headlines that have made the public panic, and I mean, it leads to what we saw at the start. Like, so I've got a quote here from the Sunday Times: the 38 days where Britain sleepwalked. That's not right either. Sleepwalked into disaster. So the 38 days when Britain sleepwalked into disaster. That's the Sunday Times. It's making the situation look quite bad. That's one of the mild ones. And, you know, that's then caused more problems because we've got stupid headlines like, this is one of the worst ones: popping out to buy milk might prove as deadly as driving on Kabul's most suicide-bombed road. That makes the public anxious, and that causes that panic buying that we saw at the start, irrational behaviour. And I mean, that suited the news quite well because then they had another story to cover. They had, in quotation marks, "Panic by Britain" was one of the headlines. So
I think it's interesting to note when, like, we don't know, but when these headlines were written, so this has happened over 3 months, longer now, and at the start people were naturally worried and scared and anxious, so those headlines would not have been helpful at all.
These are all from
the start
of lockdown.
Because towards the end now, I think we still need more of that, not to that extent, but you know, we need the sort of shocking, scary-ish headlines because people aren't anxious enough now. I don't think people are just becoming complacent. Like we were saying before, have people forgotten? We need them
to be reminded,
some
really, and the
bigger
media
headline,
is.
yeah.
So the media, well, there you go then. So the media should really be doing a job. The media's essential. The job of the media is to oppose the government, so that we've got this debate going on. If the government do something wrong, the media hold them accountable.
Yeah.
I mean, it tends to be vice versa now because the government will say, well, the media is doing all this. And I mean, to talk about the positives of the media, I feel like they're not the only headlines. We have had headlines to keep people's spirits up. Their support from the media on key workers has been pretty phenomenal. They're definitely in favour of the key workers, and you know, they've got a hard job to do, so making sure that they keep their spirits up, keep their head held high is very important. And the media, I think, they've not really slated. I've not seen a headline where they've slated key workers. Why would you? I mean, you'd be pretty much burying yourself. For me, people weren't panicking at first, and that could also be the media's fault, but that sort of contradicts them with those sort of headlines. Like you said, there's a vast amount of media. All of them have done this apocalypse news, and they've all contradicted each other and themselves, because they'll do a headline like that one day, and then another journalist from the same paper, the same news outlet will, oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
So it's just confused. It's confused society, but we need that. We also need such a broad opinion.
Yeah.
We don't want one man's opinion.
No.
We want that. We want to pick and choose. So I think the media has made the situation worse, but I also think they've made the situation better. I think they've made it more worse than they have made it better. I think their intervention has made, like, they would have been better staying out of it. But
I don't think the panic stemmed from the media. I think the panic stemmed from being such a new thing. But you're right, I don't think the media.
No, I don't think they helped, especially with that a headline popping out to buy me that might prove as deadly as driving on Kabul's most suicide-bombed road. I'm sure it will. I've never had anybody try to suicide bomb me whilst I'm on the way to the supermarket, but I don't want to jinx it. So, yeah. Is it all a conspiracy? Did somebody plant it?
I mean, there's a few conspiracies going around, you know. There's the one of it just doesn't exist. There is no coronavirus, which I just think is a load of rubbish.
They're dying from.
Exactly. But in terms of is it planted, again, I'm not really a conspiracy-driven person. I don't think so.
My mum and dad when I ran that question past my mum and dad, they said to me, "Have you heard the one about Huawei?" The whole they started it so everybody'd be stuck inside whilst they tested 5G.
Yeah.
What?
It's just a
What? I mean, the British government. It's really recent. This time as we're filming the podcast, the British government have just pulled out of the Huawei 5G deal, and now I'm like, is it a conspiracy? Why have they pulled out of the deal? It's probably because they don't want China to have so much control over the country, more likely. But and then the last controversial question I've got for you is: are China to blame? I mean, Donald Trump would definitely say China are to blame. Would you like me to take this one for a minute? Because it's hard to answer without
go on.
being
I feel like I have an answer, but
I think you need to split. China can be split into two parts. It can be split into a lot of parts, but let's just split it into two parts for now. The government and the people. Because it was communist, pretty well still communist really. That's how you separate the country really. The people and the government. The people haven't done anything wrong. All this online racism that popped up when, I mean, they're not even Chinese. They might be of Chinese origin, or I'm not sure. I want to be correct in what I'm saying, but they weren't born in China. They haven't that was so ridiculous. That really wound me up. But even the people who do live in China, they're not to blame.
No.
The Chinese government, on the other hand, as we know, have done time after time the most horrific things, whether it was on purpose, by accident. I mean, those camps. I don't want to get sniper shot or something, but yeah, those camps aren't great, are they? They've just proven to the rest of the world that they're not a very ethical company. Time after time after time again, they do not look after their people. There's no food in the country. I can't blame people for eating bats when they're starving to death.
I don't even think people.
I know it's part of the culture as well.
No, but I don't think it came from someone eating a bat.
Oh yeah, that's another strap.
Yeah, it's another. I think that's another media thing. I think didn't it? So a bat and it transmitted to another animal and they ate. It did come from a food market, but not.
That's what coronaviruses are. They just pass from one thing
so
to another.
So it passed to another species.
Like with swine flu, humans could never get the swine flu, but somebody fed chicken or a bird or something to a pig. Inside the pig, it mutated, and then from the pig, it mutated into humans. So it's literally just goes through. So yeah, it might have started as a bat. They found this coronavirus, the one that's killing all these people now. They found that a couple of years ago in a cave in China, because there's a team who actually go out. I know all this because there's a series on Netflix called Explained, and they've done one on the coronavirus. So if anybody wants to take a look at that, and you can educate yourself further, it's actually very interesting. But yeah, this team, their job is to catch the bats and to rate the diseases that they're carrying on how serious they could be. I think it might have been quite a few years ago, I can't tell you. I feel like it's 2, but it's probably more. Or so years ago, they actually rated the coronavirus a 2 out of 10, 10 being the most dangerous. But that's because it mutated. It's not the same coronavirus disease that they found in that cave. I mean, it's not that deadly. Which is up for debate, but the reason it's been able to spread so far is because it's not so deadly. It can pass on to somebody else before it kills that person. With Ebola and SARS and MERS, they were literally killing the person before they had time to pass it on. So that's more explained in that short documentary on Netflix as well. So let's move on to some strategies, and I mean, this might be me talking for quite a while now, so we'll just try and break it up with conversation. So we've got in the UK, we had, this is a direct quote from gov.co.uk, which is our government's website. Our response to COVID-19 is guided by the international situation, the advice of organisations such as the World Health Organization, so that's one player in the whole, in this all, in our decision-making process for how we're going to tackle it. Surveillance and then data modelling based on the best available evidence and recommendations of our expert bodies. So our country is taking advice from a global advice giver, essentially. That's what they are. So that's one player. The Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, which is better known as SAGE, provides expert medical scientific advice. I think that's more specific to us on a national scale. I think that's us. That is English, that's UK. They always refer to SAGE. And I think they failed. They failed us, I think. It's controversial, but they referred to SAGE all the time. And they never... I don't know what they did.
It's the same thing with what I was saying before about the behind closed doors. I don't know.
We don't know.
But we don't know how much they tell them and how much they're following.
Let's discuss what we do know, because we've both done the research. Let's pretend like we've both spent hours making sure that what we say is as close to correct as we can. This is not just this has come from gov.co.uk. But yeah. Then finally, the 4 UK government Chief Medical Officers, or CMOs, continue to advise the health and social care systems across the UK and government agencies in all parts of the UK involved in responding to this outbreak. So there's the third party, the Chief Medical Officers. So you've got a couple of people making decisions on how we should respond to the disease, right? They came up with, as well as with the government, this phased response. I've found the easiest way to pack this down. So I will talk about it. Please just bear with us for a minute whilst I discuss the phased response. A lot of people will recognise these first 2 phases, which were terms used very early on in the process. The contain phase. The contain phase was aimed to catch cases early and trace the contacts of people who were in contact with the people who had been tested positive to prevent further spread of the disease. Why were we dilly-dallying about with the contain phase? In my opinion, we should have just gone straight to the delay phase, which is what's next, which I can discuss now. When containment didn't work and cases rose drastically, we entered the delay phase, which we are still in now. This means the government would ramp up the effort to delay the disease, reducing the pressure and strain on our National Health Service. Why wasn't that done from the start? That is something that could have been done. Why didn't they just mix the 2 phases? They could have done that whilst still trying to catch the cases early. Maybe they didn't want to start public alarm or whatever, but the media did a good enough job of that. Boris Johnson stated that anyone with symptoms would have to remain home for up to 7 days. Now that's 14 days, I think. School trips abroad should be stopped, and over people over 70 with serious health conditions not to go on cruises. This soon intensified with schools shutting, large-scale gatherings such as festivals to be cancelled, and the government urging people to work from home where possible. Eventually, this led up to the government imposing lockdown on the 23rd of March. We probably discussed it. They should have gone into lockdown earlier. That's what could be improved about those 2 phases. And I don't see why they couldn't do that one whilst doing that one. Or why couldn't they start this one at the same time as... So why couldn't they start the delay phase at the same time as the contain phase?
Yeah, I think the phases were I think now they've got this scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 4, where we're at that's a lot better. I think the public needs something simple of literally, on that scale they have the number and then exactly what it means about the virus. That just seems a bit confusing. Like you say, there's grey area in between all phases. I don't think there is a moving from one phase to the other, because there is a grey area, like you say. I think it's too. It seems like they're trying to do something there, trying to come up with a plan.
It's like a film. It was literally like we are entering the contain phase. We are entering the delay phase. And when the start of the discussion for the delay phase came up, everyone's like, we need to enter the delay phase. We need to enter.
Yeah.
It was literally just a concept, really.
No, I agree.
It was just a plan, and they should have just been implementing the plan. I don't understand why they had to enter the delay phase to start these things. Why not just start them?
Yeah, it should have been a rough guide, like you say. They
stuck to that phase strategy way too much, in my opinion. There is another 2 phases which we haven't seen and hopefully won't, because it means that the situation would have to intensify for us to move on to these. The research phase, which I think is poorly named because they are doing research now, but we are not in the research phase. If the situation continues to get worse, then the government will intensify the focus on finding out more about the virus and how it spreads. And those that are already infected, we're going to look at the best way to treat them. So far, the government has invested over 40 million in trying to find a vaccine, which is undergoing clinical testing and is still a couple months off. So, we're not in the research phase, but what I said about them merging the phases, like imagine them waiting. Oh no, we're not in the research phase yet.
Yes,
we can't start doing the vaccine. That's basically what they did in the contain phase about the delay phase. Thank God that they've started looking for a vaccine. Imagine, and I mean clinical testing is they're quite far down the line, so that's not too bad. There's nothing really to complain at with that one. Research was probably being done from the second it was being done before the virus. They knew it was coming. The research was done, they just chose to ignore it. Finally, phase 4 is to mitigate. If this phase was to be implemented, it would imply that the government believe that this is the worst case scenario. The strategy includes reducing the police and only dealing with the most serious crimes. The NHS could be closed to all but critical care, and retired staff could be called back to duty. This stage aims to ensure that the most vulnerable people are protected and health workers are supported with the inevitable surge in the demand. It's pretty serious. That's what was coming if the numbers kept rising. One day, let's hope to God, but that could have to be implemented. The streets have been mad.
Yeah.
Because there's no way they can reduce the police. And if they said on national television we're reducing the police, some people would be like, oh, brilliant, they're reducing the police, I can take advantage. So, I mean, they'd have to do it discreetly, and maybe that's why we haven't heard so much about that phase. But, yeah. Moving on to the final questions, which is to do with all that information. Do you think that the strategy has worked?
I mean, like I said, I don't think the contained delay or the phases thing was really maybe necessary for them to have a rough idea, but I think we need that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It needs to be simplified down for us. That we didn't need all that. Did it work? I mean, it's just like did they do well and did they not? In some aspects,
it did. Question, isn't it, really? What could we suggest to make it better? Like, look at other countries first and foremost.
Yeah.
The ones that have done well, the ones that have done wrong. What can we do right in future? What can we change?
I think I was thinking this. It's so easy for me. I'll watch these announcements and me and my parents will be talking about it, and I'll criticise everything they're doing. I'll be like, oh, why are they doing that? That doesn't make sense. And then I'll be thinking, well, I should I if I couldn't do any better, but it's not my job to do better. It's their job. It's not our job to think of ways they could have done it better.
I mean, at the moment, it's our job to sit here and try and inform anybody that's watching of everything, like try and give them the best scope of what's gone on. I mean, we are giving opinions, but we're trying to do it as unbiasedly as we can. It's really hard to be unbiased, but to do better, you can always do better. Let's face it.
And I would hope that if this ever happened again, it would be a lot better.
Like with technology nowadays, should the disease not even should that disease be allowed to even transfer? Like, they're in that cave trying to find out diseases that could wipe out humanity. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there will never be a disease that wipes out humanity. Scientists said it's not possible because there's always going to be a line where it's like it either kills people too quickly so they can't pass it on, so then it creates a barrier and the rest of the people live, or it spreads like the coronavirus has but it doesn't kill as many people. Because it doesn't kill as many people, it can spread. I mean, if coronavirus, say, was a conspiracy and somebody's got a finger on a button, everybody gets infected across the world, and when they hit that button the disease kills everybody, then it could kill somebody, but no one's going to do that. I mean, unless it is, where's the sniper shot? Like, watch out, we're giving away secrets here. But yeah. Finally, just to conclude, we had a look at all those the countries at the start. Which country should we take the most, like, inspiration from, I guess, in our future developments?
In terms of leadership, I think that Denmark, that the Frederiksen, did really well at leading.
I say Germany also did very well.
Germany was like amazing in terms of the testing. Germany was amazing.
One thing that we could discuss is whether women world leaders did better. It's definitely a point for discussion, but I don't think it bodes very well for men when you've got Donald Trump, because there's no way I'm going to sit here and let him
competition
speak for the whole of white men, am I?
Yeah, I think obviously like you can't not mention Taiwan as well.
Taiwan, I mean,
you just can't.
They've done a good job, haven't they? Let's face it.
Yeah. And I think we learned just as much from the countries that failed and our mistakes
100%.
As the ones who didn't.
100%. Yeah, and they were ready. They were told that you need to be ready, and they were like, well, let's get ready then.
Yeah, it hit us fairly late in comparison to other places.
I think we got unlucky as well, though. I do think we got unlucky because our population's so big compared with... It's still twice the size of Taiwan's population, but their population density is so big that we can't really say, there's not a counter argument against Taiwan. They're an island just like us. Their population's half of ours, but their country's probably about half the size of ours, and their population density is 3 times larger than ours. We have no excuse. If they can do it, so can we. And I think future strategies need to include having stronger control of the borders, stopping people at the borders, testing every single person that comes in, cancel your holidays. You can't go out unless you're not planning to come back in for the next 3 months. It just needed to be strict, I think. I don't mind, because I discussed about them, it has to become quite like a dictatorship for them to, and they don't want to do that, because we are a democracy. We're proud to be a democracy, and it's forcing really, but I don't mind that if it's going to save lives.
Yeah, I think they just have to do what they can to protect the people who want to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's going to be people who don't listen to it, and they have to.
There is people that don't care. I've purposely avoided talking about the Black Lives Matter protests, which do tie in with this because they were protesting. I'm going to leave that one. I'm quite happy to discuss it, and if anybody who is still watching this or listening, hopefully you are, would find that an interesting topic of conversation, then we will be sure to return to discuss that. It definitely does tie in with the lockdown situation, but I have purposely left that out just for now because there's so much other things to talk about. And our primary question that we're trying to answer, which is the last thing I will ask to conclude, did the UK handle it well? No? I'm going to say yes, because it's the first time. Next time, there's no excuses. Okay? That's our conclusion. So that's 50-50 split. So that's good. Half people might agree with you. In fact, what was it, like 70% of people should agree with me? But
maybe opinions have changed after today.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully we can have given you some scope of the whole thing and you're like, wow, that was a lot of information to take in. So that is it for the first ever Topical Podcast. I hope you did enjoy it. Remember that we've got loads more things to talk about. If you ever want to DM me with topics or a topic that I've just discussed, I'd absolutely love to discuss it more in detail with people on Instagram's probably the best one for me to DM me on there. My Instagram will be in the description as a link, as well as Danika's and the Topical, or the Topical Tropical
The Tropic
Instagram that Danika's setting up. It is a good brand, so make sure you go and check that out, as well as go and check out my the rest of my main channel, where I'm making short films and shortly vlogs, as well as loads of filmmaking stuff, which is also what I'm into. And that pretty much sums it up for this video. So thank you to Danika for coming on the podcast. We have tried to remain socially distanced this entire time, so hopefully you've taken that into account. Very proud and very happy to finish that podcast. So thank you to everybody that's listened to this point, and I will see you, or we might see you again, hopefully very soon. Thank you very much for watching, and that is it for today.